Morning, folks. I'm going to take you along with me on the trip today. We are going to install a door. I'll take you through step by step how to install a door in an existing wall. We'll have to cut into shiplap siding, or not shiplap siding, hardy siding. So I'll show you how to frame it out and install a door. Pardon me. All right. So that doorway is 32 inches wide. So our rough needs to be 34. Add 2 to your width. You're just going in this area here. And I'll show you the outside. They're getting ready to repaint the house. We're gonna just miss that gas line going into the house. You wanna make sure you kind of line it out and verify you're not gonna hit anything. I always rough the inside out, delicately dremel the drywall to make sure there's nothing in the wall. Especially, don't just take a sawzall and start sawing. You would think almost all the time garage lines run straight from the attic all the way down. These lights here usually are ran the same way. They don't wrap them around the wall most of the time. So we shouldn't run into anything. The first thing to do is locate your stud. Use a stud finder to find your stud. Go ahead and mark out your studs. And then basically just frame, take a pencil and a level and frame out the opening that you're getting ready to make. So I mark the studs. You're gonna want one stud to be your jack stud. So this is gonna be the side of the stud's about there. So I'm basically just gonna draw out the door. All right, so I've got the doorway lined out. Whatever your door is, your width, add 2 inches. So this is a 32-inch door. I need a 34-inch rough. About 82.5, 82 3/4 is your height on all spec home doors. I'm gonna try to make enough room for the cripple, which is what holds the header up. So make you a test hole first and make sure that you're up against your stud. You need at least one, your hinge side needs to be up against the stud that is nailed into both plates, the bottom and the top. So now all we do is get you a long bit, run a hole here all the way through the outside, and here all the way through to the outside. And then that will give you the exact same, that'll tell you where your top points are on the outside of your wall. All right, if you did it right, it should look like that. You got a hole in each top corner, get your lines outlined. The outside should have the same thing. Got a hole there and a hole there. All I gotta do is take my level and level off with that. Make sure that I line up with where it's at. So now you do is just take you a sawzall or your multi-tool and cut your drywall out along your lines. All right, so cut you a small hole first. Almost all houses that have been built in the last probably 30 years at least, the wiring usually goes across. The main line will come down from the ceiling usually, but your outlets along your wall are usually on a horizontal. Older houses, that's totally out the window. Sometimes they ran the main power to the light, and then they've got vertical runs going down to each outlet, so you may only have vertical runs. Either way, cut you a hole, probably all the way across your opening, maybe just this big. You need to look down in there and make sure you don't have any lines. I knew pretty well beforehand that there wouldn't be anything here, but before you do this yourself, make sure that you look in the wall cavities to make sure you're not going to have to move electrical or something else. Outside, you do the exact same thing. Come off your pilot holes that you screwed through the wall on the inside. And you don't need a very big hole. Small bit will work. And just use your level to make a line. Now all I'm going to do is just cut this all the way down. And then I'll be ready to start framing the door out roughly. I'm going to go all the way up inside here because this is going to have about a 4-inch trim piece. So I'm going to have to come back and cut this. But I don't want to do that until I get the door set and know exactly where the trim's going to be. Get a little too carried away and you'll have to do some caulking or take siding off and patch it. So this is the best way to do it. Make sure when you cut this stuff, they make a hardy blade. I would recommend getting one, and wear a dust mask. This stuff's nasty. All right, I got the siding off. Now you just take your sawzall and run it down the sheathing, whatever they're using to cut it. Just run it all the way along. You'll have to cut the bottom plate, which will either be green or treated. So cut that. And then take your sawzall and cut along the top. These will have to cut up further in order to get the header in. Just take your sawzall and cut those and cut them down there, and we can reuse these as our cripples. So that's the next stage. Just sawzall those. Sawzall your opening. So this is standard door framing. So these are your jacks, king studs on each side. These go, this is the top seal plate. This is your bottom plate. This is the treated board that I just cut out. Jacks are what hold the header up. This is usually like a 2x8 with a 2x4 on top and bottom. There's two 2x. If you look at it from the side, I know this is crude, but I'm drawing with one hand. These are 2x4s. This is a 2x8, 2x8. That's what a header looks like from the side. Imagine that square. So these are the cripples up here. King studs on both sides, jacks on both sides, and then your header sets on top of your jacks. You can't really do that when you're doing what I'm doing on this. So we're going to at least have one solid stud over here. I'm going to go ahead and put a jack up against it to set a header on. I'm not going to build a full 2x8 because I would have to rip all the drywall, nails, and all the siding stuff out of this side. I'm basically going to probably set a 2x4. I'll cut this a 2x4 width and put a 2x4 across here. If you're wanting to do this to make as little damage as possible, you can't put a proper header in. On a doorway, it's not as big of a deal. I will go ahead and put a king or just a jack stud on this side, because to put a king stud, I'd have to nail it in here and have to go all the way up to the top and nail it in. I can't do that. All right, so I just went and got a board. I had to give a blood sample and dedicate one of my lives, or one of my children, to buy it. Gee, Merry Christmas. All right, so since you can't put a full header in, we cut these off, the studs that were coming down the wall, cut them off about 1.5 inches. You'll need a multi-tool in order to do that. So I cut them off short, And I put this 2x4 in. I've got a jack stud here. It's against the king stud. Back here, I want this header to ride all the way up on this other king stud. That's what I'm gonna use this as. I'm gonna put another jack stud in here, and then that will hold the load. If you can, try to get a screw or something in here. That way your header is tied to both a king stud over here and a king stud on this side. That's more than sufficient to carry the load of the window, the door. So you can do it properly if you want to cut a bunch of sheetrock out. Like I said, this siding is nailed in, so if you were to go up through there and try cutting those off, you're liable to have some boards and stuff fall. You got to do this as least invasively as possible. So I'm gonna get some long screws, toenail this in to this other king stud, and then I'll put a cripple or a jack in here, and then we'll be ready to set the door. All right, the frame is in. That's basically it. Now it's just hanging the door and trimming it out. Trim's gonna cover all this. This has a really wide, like 3-inch trim that goes over the top of it. Just put you a level up against. You wanna make sure your hinge side is as straight as possible. I have lost my level and my mind. Well, somewhere around here is a level. Put you a level on this side, preferably at least a 2 to 4 foot. You want a longer level. Put your level on it. Make sure this is good and plumb. Screw it in to your stud. Hang your door, then readjust this side as needed. That's it. Piece of cake. Just trim out now. All right, so got that one done. I'm gonna come back and trim out. It's a hardy board on the outside, and it's got a 1-inch trim out around the door. Basically what I showed you in that video was how to insert a door into a existing opening. You could run into some other stuff. If it's insulated, you got to pull the insulation out. Basically where I left the video is just the trim out. That's just standard installing the door and trimming out both sides. I'll show you some footage when I get the door fully trimmed out, but it's installed.